Tonight, we are going to Chicago, Illinois, the corner of North and Clybourne, Uncle Julio's Hacienda. To those people who went there, it was known for its delicious handmade guacamole and salsa. To me, it was known as the first place that I had my real job. For those of us that worked there, we called it the $1 Million Taco Stand. And whether or not those were the actual revenue numbers, I'm not so sure. But the place was always cranking. It was always busy. We're talking 2-hour waits on a Wednesday night, and it was the energy, the vibe. It was the place to be. And I was so stoked that I got to do a management trainee program there. I worked through each position in the restaurant, and then they sent me off to Dallas for 2 weeks, where I officially became a manager. But it was at Dallas that I learned Uncle Julio's real secret sauce, and that's that they had a procedure, a policy, a checklist, a process for everything. We're talking 32 steps to make a margarita. We're talking 10 steps to scrub a toilet, and it just started there. So I headed back to Chicago. I threw away my polyester blue bow tie, and I threw away my polyester blue apron, and I put on my fancy manager clothes, and I went into work. Julie, my GM, was there the first day, and she greeted me, and she said, "Hey, Erin, what's your plan?" I said, "Julie, I've got my plan. I've got my processes. I got my procedure manual. I went to Staples and picked up a new clipboard. I got my checklist. I'm going to go out there and work the process." Next day, same question. "Julie, I'm working the process, right? I'm working the manual." It was a few weeks, month or two later, Julie was there greeting me again with, "Erin, what's your plan for tonight?" And my answer was a little bit different. I said, "Julie, you know what my plan is? My plan is to get through the shift, okay? My plan is to not have the hostesses roll their eyes at everything I say. My plan is to maybe get the servers to give me a little bit of respect. My plan is to not have the bartenders rob us blind while I'm working. My plan is to not be the butt of another practical joke from the busboys. That's my plan, Judy, okay? I'm just going to get through the shift." It was really impressive to say that to your new boss. She loved it. And at that point, I went out and I realized that that whole buzz, the whole excitement, the whole fun of Uncle Julio's wasn't there. It was miserable. I was miserable. I was stressed out. The staff was fighting. The customers were yelling at me. The whole fun of being part of Uncle Julio's was gone. I remember driving into work one Saturday night, my hands like this on my steering wheel. I had my eyes open, actually, when I was driving, but it was like that stomach of like, oh, Saturday night, we're going to be so busy. Like, "Erin, girl, get it together. Get it together. Go in there and talk to the hostesses. Go in there and talk to the servers. Go in there and talk to the busboys." And I'm like, that's my plan. It took me 6 months of Julie asking me what my plan is for me to actually come up with a real plan. But Julie was missing one key word. What's your people plan? That night I went into the host stand and I got real curious about what was going on up there. I got curious and I listened because they were all high schoolers. So there was constant drama. I need to listen and get curious and figure out who was talking to who that night so I could figure out the plan for them. Then when it came to the servers, I thought, what is it that servers really care about? 2 words: cash, money. So when it came to them, I thought I can show them I care about them by teaching them how to make more tips. And when it came to the busboys, that was a little bit of a different scenario because there was a cultural thing going on. They were all Latino. They referred to me as the güera, the white girl. Machismo culture does not like taking orders from the white girl. So with them, I had to have a new approach. And I thought, what can I control with them? How can I build respect with them? My solution? My next morning shift, I greeted Carlos at the back door with my scrub brush and my spray bottle, and I said, "Vamos a los baños! We're going to the bathrooms!" And Carlos and I scrubbed the toilets together with the 10-point checklist, and we cleaned the bathrooms. And did my relationship totally turn around with the busboys right away? No. But slowly but surely, The Wera wasn't just giving them orders, she was there working with them. Now, a strange thing, or perhaps not so strange thing, happened when I shift my focus from the process to the people that were bringing the process to life. The buzz came back. The energy came back. The team was like a well-oiled and super fun machine. The servers were talking to the busboys. The busboys were talking to the hostesses. Everyone was vibing. The customers were happy, and I was happy with my career choice again. So much so that one night after her shift, Julie was having dinner at the bar, and she called me over, and she's like, Erin, I don't know what's going on. I mean, your shifts, people are high-fiving, they're smiling, there's such a good energy. And I said, yes, Julie, the results of my plan. What is your people plan? Now, the world has changed just a little bit since I was in Chicago. We hadn't just gone through a worldwide pandemic. And I think it's fair to say that each of us at some level was impacted by the pandemic. It brought on this forced pause for people to question their workplace. People to question, hey, is this the kind of work environment I want to be a part of? Is this how I want to be treated? Is this the kind of work I want to do? And for so many, the answer was a resounding no. Welcome to the Great Resignation. Now, there's a lot of factors that go into the Great Resignation, but the Pew Research Center did a study that said 57% of the people are leaving their jobs because they feel disrespected. And that disrespect is just the tip of the iceberg. Culture was broken. They weren't focused on the people, they were focused on profit. They were focused on the process. And the people were just a pawn in the game. But they could get away with it, right? Because that's just how things were done. We got to keep going. That's what the economy is, until the pandemic said, hold up, wait a minute. It brought on this forced pause, and it's brought on this reset for people to say, ask even bigger questions. What really matters? What do I really want to do? And when it came to thinking about the work they wanted to do in their workplaces, the answers came in the form of, I want to work in a place where I can be seen, where I can be heard, where I can make a difference, where I can make an impact. Another interesting thing happened in the pandemic, and I think the question of, hey, how you doing, took on a whole new meaning, right? Before we would just kind of throw that around, hey, what's up, how you doing? But during the pandemic, it became, hey, how you doing? No, really, how are you? And for a lot of people, the answer was not good. You look at the current mental health care crisis in the States today, and we can see the loneliness, the loss, the isolation, the uncertainty took a toll. I would argue that as leaders today, there's no greater responsibility to create cultures where people can be seen, can be heard, and where they belong. Cultures of psychological safety where people can take risks, where they can be themselves. Cultures of connection. So what if, as leaders, you got a little bit curious and asked a few more questions? What if, as leaders, you genuinely cared for the people that you worked with and allowed them to be who they are? And what if, as leaders, you controlled the only thing that we can control, which is how we show up? Imagine the workforce then. Well, we're going to go on a little tour tonight. I'm going to invite you on a leadership journey. We started in Chicago, and we've got a few more stops along the way. And my intention in taking you on this tour is sharing with you the lessons I learned about how curiosity, caring for people, and controlling how we show up go to create these cultures of connection. And my intention is to give you all some tools, some tricks, some mindsets to be able to hit the ground running to create your people plan. Are we ready for a trip? I heard let's go. We got one person that's going, so you're all going with us. So we started off Yes to the front row. We started off in Chicago, Illinois. Next stop, we're going to Jacksonville, Florida. After that, we're headed to Houston, Texas. Holla, Texas. Then we're going out west to Seattle. Any Seattle folks? No? And then grab your passports, my friends, because we are headed to Panama, where I spent 2 years in the Peace Corps. Yeah, let's do this thing. All right. If you think I'm going to stand up here and talk to you all about human connection and think that I'm not going to give you all a chance to connect with each other, you don't know me at all yet. We're going to start off with an activity, and for those introverts in the room, don't run to the bathroom. It's not going to hurt, I promise. What we're going to do in just a minute, I'm going to walk you through the activity, and then you're going to have at it. So you're going to find a buddy. Next to you, front, behind you, I don't care, just you're going to be working in pairs.
Liz, I got you.
Working in pairs. You're going to turn to that buddy, and if you don't know each other, introduce yourself. Hold on. Hey. Maybe I don't need to connect a bunch of college kids. You guys are all connecting already. So what we're going to do, there's one more instruction to the exercise. You're going to turn to that person, and you're going to have 1 minute, and you're going to ask them, what is something that you are excited about? Hold. Goodness. All right, I'm going to pause you there. Did each person have a chance? You guys jumped right into it before I could give my full, detailed, particular, perfectionist instructions. Did you each get a chance to ask each other what you were excited about? Perfect, awesome. All right, so I'm going to do a little debrief, a little recap, and ask you a few more questions. I'm assuming most of you knew the person that you were talking to. Yes. And even if you did you find out something new about that person that you didn't know before? Can I get one yes in the group to prove my yes? We got a yes. Perfect. Exactly. My next question. When you ask them, hey, what are you excited about? Did you find yourself asking more questions? Yes. Yeah, you guys got it. Yes. Yes. Well, I'm thinking, hearing the noise in the room, that the answer was yes. Because if you ask someone, hey, what are you excited about? I'm like, Joe, what are you excited about? And Joe's like, I want a trip to Tahiti. You're not going to be like, right? You're going to be like, Tahiti? How did you win? Where are you going? Where is Tahiti, right? We're going to keep asking these questions. Because when we ask someone what they're excited about, they get excited, that energy. And we're feeling that energy. And we're mirroring each other's energy, so we're going to ask more questions. We're going to get more curious, and we're going to find out things about that person that we didn't know before. So professors, faculty in the room, when was the last time you all asked one of your students what you were excited about? Students in the room, when was the last time you asked one of your professors what they were excited about? It's probably been a little bit, right? Because we get into our normal routines, we get into our normal habits, and we don't ask the curious questions. So now we're going to head to Jacksonville, Florida, our second stop on our trip, where my husband Mike and I currently live. And I have to admit that Mike and I get into a routine with our questions, and one of our go-to questions, which is not exciting at all, is, how was your day? Well, the other day, I was in the kitchen cooking dinner, and Mike was hanging out against the counter, and he's like, hey, Erin, how was your day? So I started telling him, and I'm chopping up vegetables, and I'm chatting, and I'm telling him the details of my day, and I'm chopping, and I'm chatting, and I'm chopping, and I'm chatting, and I hadn't heard from Mike for a minute, so I looked up and looked over, and he was doing one of these. It was that long before Mike looked up and he's like, Erin, why did you stop talking? And I'm like, Mike, you're not even listening to me. Super dramatic. And he's like, what? And he proceeded to repeat back every word that I just said, which was even, not yes, it's horrible, which was even more infuriating, right? Here's the deal, my friend. This lesson is going out to you in particular. Listening doesn't count unless I feel heard. Now we got some more people in the front row like, yes, what she said, right? Listening doesn't count unless I feel heard. Unless I feel like you're listening to me, you can repeat the words back, you can nod your head, but if I don't feel it, it doesn't count. So I said we're going on this journey talking about connection, but we're also going to be talking about a few things that go to break connection. And I call these the connection crashers. And these are the words we say, the habits we do, the actions that we take that a lot of times we don't even realize that are slowly going to crack connection. And the first one we're going to counter is the active listening head nod. Now, perhaps some of you have read articles about active listening, perhaps you've studied it. Yes, you're nodding your heads. Yes, Erin, right? And this active listening is all about we nod our heads, we paraphrase back. But the thing about active listening is let's talk about what's really going on up there. Let's talk about the real activity. I've got 3 scenarios. Let's see if any of them resonate. The first one is the quick head nod that looks like this. And we're like, is this a long story? Because I've got exams to study for, I've got classes to get to, I've got things to do. Can you move it along? The next one is more, starts off kind of with a head nod, and then people's eyes get really big, and then it almost becomes this like full body, like head roll of a head nod. And what's happening here is we're like, oh, I hope they finish talking soon because I've got the fix. I've got the solution. I've got the unsolicited advice that I can't wait to give them that they don't know they wanted. And the third one is the contemplative head nod. And when people are doing this to me, I'm like, oh, they are intrigued by what I'm saying. But really what's happening is they're thinking, what am I going to have for dinner? There's a few giggles. There's a few smiles. We laugh because it's true. Listening is hard, right? There's the external distractions of the phone and all of the things. But there's also these internal distractions. And this is the activity in our head that we're fighting with when we're listening to people. Our bias, our assumptions, our judgments, the narratives, our experiences, our perspectives, and our stories. It's all of this activity that goes on that stops us from getting curious, that stops us from hearing the full picture. So instead of all of those words in that activity, I like to suggest instead of active listening, we think about curious listening. And instead of all the words happening in our brain, we replace them all with wonder. I wonder what's really going on. I wonder what this is really about. I wonder if there's something that I am not seeing. And when we replace all of that activity with wonder, the curiosity becomes the antidote to all of that activity. And when we're curious, we ask more questions, we get a fuller picture of who that person is and what they're really about. So as leaders, how can you perhaps stay curious 1 minute longer, and when that complaining Kathy comes up, you instead think maybe she has a perspective that you haven't heard? How as leaders can you stay curious for 1 minute longer, and instead of giving the answer, ask a question instead? And how as leaders can you stay curious 1 minute longer and perhaps let that quiet person that doesn't normally speak up, give them a chance to talk, and maybe perhaps you can find out something about them that you might not know. So staying curious. As we head on to our next stop, we talk about care and genuinely caring for people. When we think about care, often the word empathy comes up. And when you hear the term empathy, I'll ask you bright students, what's the normal phrase that we use to describe empathy? Any ideas? Feeling what others feel, and we do that normally times we say by walking in their shoes, right? Empathy, walking in their shoes. So we're going to do another activity now, and I've got a few more instructions for you for this one. So our activity now is we're going to practice empathy. So when I say go, you're going to slide your shoes off your feet. I'm not done explaining the activity yet. I don't know what's happening. You're going to slide them over to your neighbor. You're going to slide your feet into their shoes. And you're going to walk around and all be empathetic, right? This was the best turnaround time of, wait, what's happening? If you weren't paying attention before, my friends, you were right then. All right, everyone take it down. You freaked out a little bit, right? Because when we think about putting our feet in someone else's shoes, it's kind of gross. But we throw this cliche around of empathy, walking in someone's shoes, but a lot of times we don't think about what that really means. So now we are going to do an exercise that will allow you to experience empathy with each other. First things first, we're going to slow things down a little bit, and I'm going to walk you through a breathing exercise before we do a reflective exercise. So this is called square breathing, box breathing, famous for Navy SEALs and by psychiatrists alike. And what we're going to do, box breathing, is you breathe in for 4, you hold it for 4, you breathe out for 4, and you hold it for 4. We're going to do 4 rounds of this. I will count for you, and all you have to do is breathe. So let's go ahead and slow it down. We'll slow your heartbeats down for me freaking you out about the whole shoe thing. And let's go ahead and breathe in for 4. Hold it. 2, 3, 4. Out. 2, 3, 4. Hold it. 2, 3, 4. Breathe in. 2, 3, 4. Hold it. 2, 3, 4. Out. 2, 3, 4. Hold it. 2, 3, 4. 2 more rounds. Breathe in. Hold it. Breathe out. Hold it. Breathe in. Hold it. Breathe out. And hold it. So what I would like to do now is I'm going to walk you through a little visualization. You're going to think about all the shoes that you've had in your closet before, the shoes that you're wearing now, and the shoes that you've had growing up. And as I walk you through, I want you to think about the steps along the journey and perhaps moments that you might have changed or changed your perspective. So if you are comfortable, I'd invite you to close your eyes. If not, you can just kind of get a soft gaze somewhere in the room. And I would like for you to think about the schools that your shoes walk through, the hallways, the campuses, the people you met, the experiences you had in school. Think about shoes you've gone to. The churches, the mosques, the temples, the synagogues. Think about your experiences there. Think about the time that perhaps you had to pack up your shoes and you moved to a different house. Think about the neighborhoods, the houses you've lived in, the apartments, the cities, and the experiences you had there. Think about the family gatherings, the weddings, the funerals, the fights, the holidays. Think about your times with your family. Think about the that your shoes have taken you on. Perhaps a vacation. Perhaps you visited a foreign country. The sights, the sounds, the languages, the food of those places you went on an adventure. And as you reflect on the journey that you just went on, I would like you to think about, was there a moment in time that stands out that gave you a lesson or taught you a lesson that perhaps switched your perspective? And as you open your eyes and come back into the space, you're going to have a chance now to interview someone in the room to hear about one of their moments of learning and growth. So this is going to be your chance to start to understand what it's like for someone else's journey. So this is what it's going to look like. You're going to have 5 minutes. You're going to work in pairs. So you're going to reflect on the journey that you just went on. Think of a moment of growth or learning that gave you a new perspective. You'll have 5 minutes. You're going to see the questions you're going to ask on the next slide, and then I will tell you to pause, and we'll switch, and you're going to switch roles. So the questions you're going to ask are, how would you describe the moment that gave you a new perspective? So I'm going to give you a little answer, a little example, so we can see what we're talking about. For me, it would be the moment that gave me a new perspective was when I decided to join the Peace Corps. Next question, what did you think, believe, feel before that moment? How did it change? Before I joined the Peace Corps, I thought I was real sure about my point of view. I thought I knew a lot of stuff. I thought I was pretty, kind of not a know-it-all, but pretty secure in how I felt about things. And how did that change? I realized I knew nothing. I realized that there was a whole lot more to learn. And the last question, how would you describe the lesson you learned or the impact of the moment? And I think my biggest lesson learned is we need to get out of our bubbles. We need to be in situations that test us and that are challenging and hard, because that opens ourselves up to a whole different worldview and a new way of thinking. So that's a quick example, and then after you ask the questions, the interviewer is going to give a reflection back. So there's some examples up there. Hey, I was inspired when you said this, or you gave me this gift, or I want to recognize when you said this. So again, you're going to turn to a pair. One person is the interviewer. Think like I won't even mention any think you're a news reporter, so you're only asking questions. The other person responds. You reflect back. I'll give you 5 minutes, and then we're going to switch roles. All right, your 5 minutes starts now. All right, take about 1 more minute. 1 more minute. I'm going to pause you there. Pause you there. Hopefully everyone had enough time to work through the questions and the reflection. And now you're going to switch roles. So interviewee, you become the interviewer. I'll set the timer. Go ahead, round 2. Okay, you have 1 minute to finish up your conversations. 1 more minute. All right, I will pause your conversations there. Let's bring it back. All right, so in the past 10 minutes, we had, how many people do you think are in here tonight? 200, we'll say? We'll go 250, because that's a nice number. And if you think about it, we just had 250 people sharing a moment that changed your perspective, a moment that changed your experience, a story that you had that changed how you think about things. So if we think about empathy and trying to understand people, and we think about all of the people in the room with all of these different experiences, we soon start to realize that we could never actually know what it's like to be in someone else's shoes. We can never fully understand. But the effort of empathy isn't walking in someone's shoes. The effort of empathy is walking next to them, side by side. Right? I could never know for sure, I could never know what it's like to be a black person in America. A man could never know what it's like to be a woman in the boardroom. But the effort of empathy is not about knowing, it's not about agreeing, it's about understanding. It's about hearing their perspectives, it's about hearing their stories, it's about hearing their experiences and believing them for what they are. So empathy is walking next to shoulder, saying, help me understand. If we look now at some skills about empathy, we'll get a little bit more specific. These come to us from Teresa Weissman. She was a nurse in the UK and one of the first people to study empathy. And she characterized empathy as having these 4 skills: to see the world as others see it, to be non-judgmental, to understand their feelings, and to communicate your understanding of their feelings. And it's this last one here that, gets us in trouble. Now, I will give you all the benefit of the doubt as leaders, as humans, that when we don't express how those people, acknowledge how people are feeling, and we jump in to fix the solution, we're doing it, or we jump in to fix the problem, we're doing it because we don't want to see people suffering, right? We want to fix it. We want to make them feel better. But when we fix before we feel, we lose out on this major opportunity for connection. So at the least, you're adding more stuff on your plate, having to fix someone. At the worst, it ends up in tears and yelling and an explosion, which brings us to our next stop on our trip, which is to Houston Hobby Airport. Now, a few years ago, I was on a project with Avis Budget Rental Car, and I don't know if anyone in this room is familiar with their tagline, but their old tagline was, "We try harder." They weren't trying hard at all. Their JD Power scores, their customer service scores were a disaster, and basically they were saying, hey, your staff, your team doesn't care. They don't care about the clients. So we were there working with them on how to show them that they actually cared. So I was in the classroom at Houston Hobby, teaching my class, when all of a sudden, bam, the door slams open, and this woman comes storming into the room. She throws her backpack across the room, stomps over, and slams down into a chair. And one of the women in the room was like, hey, Aisha. And Aisha was like, she didn't actually hiss, but the hiss was kind of implied, like, don't mess with me right now. So I continued on teaching the class, and then I started hearing her say things like, this is stupid. This is never going to work. This is stupid. This is never going to work. So finally I was like, hey, Aisha, what's up? She's like, you want to know what's up? And she's looking me up and down, like, can you handle it? And at that point, I was like, maybe I don't want to know what's up, but I went for it, and I was like, yeah, tell me what's up. She's like, I'll tell you what's up. Out there, longest shift ever. It was a disaster. We were so busy, there was no cars. There was no inventory. They would drive their car up, we would barely get them clean, we would send someone off in the car all day long. And I'm sitting there, and I'm tired, it's toward the end of my shift, and this old man walks up, and his old cranky wife, and I say, hey, sir, how's it going? And he says, I'm here for my Nissan. And I said, I'm sorry, sir, we don't have any Nissans. And he said, what do you mean you don't have any Nissans? I reserved a Nissan. Like, he screamed at me. She said, I said, I'm sorry, sir, I'm sorry. Let me look to see what we have. And I put my head in the computer, and I was typing away, and he's like, where's my Nissan? I reserved a Nissan. You said I was going to get a Nissan. She said, I'm sorry, sir, I'm sorry. We don't have any Nissans, but let me see what I can find. Let me see what I can find. And then his wife is yelling, and I'm looking, and he's like, where's the Nissan? Where is it? And I'm sorry, I'm sorry. And finally he said, you're incompetent. Go get your manager. And I said, fine, and I walked off the line. At this point, Aisha's in tears. The rest of the class is looking at me like, nice one, teacher. And for all I know, that man is out there still screaming about a Nissan. The thing is, when Aisha was telling that story, it was like a slow-moving, spinning Nissan about to smash into a guardrail. I felt it. I kind of had a feeling that how that ending was going to be what happened. Because the thing is, Aisha, with her best intention of apologizing, trying to find him a new car, apologizing, trying to find him a new car, she was trying to fix. But all that man saw was the top of her head. And all that man heard was sorry. And all he thought was, she doesn't care. Sorry, she doesn't care. So she's trying to fix. He starts flailing. The more he flails, the more she fixes. The more she fixes, the more he flails, and then bam, explosion. So I walked over to Aisha, and I put my hand on her shoulder, and I said, Aisha, this is not okay. It is never okay for anyone to yell at someone else. It sounds like you had a horrible shift, and I hear your anger, and I hear your frustration, and I get it. She kind of looked up at me, and I said, but what if we tried something different? What if, when that man started yelling at you, you just stood there and you let him get it out? Because normally they only have about 60 seconds of hot air before it gets out. And then you said something like, sir, I can tell you are upset that we don't have the car you reserved. When I want something and we don't have it, I get upset too, and I know you want to get on your way. I'm Aisha. We're going to figure something out. And in that moment, the class, there was kind of this collective sigh. Everyone's shoulders dropped about 7 inches. And that's when you know you've hit the empathetic mark. That's when you know that people have been heard and understood, when we're acknowledging their feelings out loud, when we feel before we fix. Because the thing is, we're human beings. We're not broken. We don't need fixing. We need to be heard. We need to be understood. We need our feelings acknowledged. So leaders out there today, you all, I'm talking to every single one of you, take this off of your checklist. Fixing your people. Teachers, parents, spouses, husbands in particular. We don't need fixing. We need to be heard. We need to be understood. We need you walking side by side with us saying, hey, what's your experience? What's your perspective? I believe you, and that is empathy. Our next piece of the framework, control, we've been talking a little bit, outward when it comes to leadership, but now we're going to go a little bit inward, because while it's important to connect with other people, as leaders, it's also important that we connect with ourselves. Right? As leaders, of course, yes, we are here to serve others, but we also need to take responsibility for how we are showing up, for how we are taking ownership, and for our awareness. Now, when Aisha said we don't have a Nissan, something in that man snapped. And he started writing a real interesting story about Aisha. And something in Aisha snapped, and she started writing a real interesting story about the old man. And they dug into their stories, and they dug deep to their stories, and then the explosion. Well, there's always going to be moments, right? There's always going to be situations, circumstances, people, side glances people give us, tones people give us that make us snap. And we respond, and we react, and we can feel it in our bodies, but then what happens in our heads? The stories start. We dig in, we dig deep to the stories that we're writing, and the question is, what kind of story are you writing? Because it's our stories that create our suffering. Now, if you start hearing things, saying things like, well, I would have done it, like if only so-and-so had actually done their part, then I would have done mine. Or, yeah, I knew the budget was due today, but they weren't really working on their part, so I figured, why should I? It's the if only so-and-so would do such and such, and in the yeah budding, we know we've started the finger-pointing blame game. If there is one thing, well, the only thing we can control in our lives, much to my chagrin, because I would like to control it all, is our response to situations. And when we're finger-pointing and when we're playing the blame game, we've given over that control. Our stories create our suffering, but we get to choose our story. And if we choose wisely, we can be at peace, we can be at calm, we can be at ease. If we choose poorly, we get angry, and we get cynical, and we spin down the drain. So grab your slickers, grab your galoshes, because we're headed to Seattle for the next stop on our journey. Imagine you all were up on a stage like this one, and imagine there was two huge jet propeller engines on either side to set the tone. Imagine you're looking out at 250 people, 20 tables of airline flight attendants, of gate agents, and you're there to help this already great airline become even greater. Well, that was my role for about 3 months, traveling from the East Coast to the West Coast about 20 times to help them create their new customer experience. Now, about 6 sessions in, something interesting started to happen, and I noticed this trend. It was about the time that we would have them work in small groups, and we had them answer the question, well, what are your new customers like? Describe them in words, what do they like, what are their preferences? And after we would have them do their group work, I would ask if anyone wanted to share their answer. And there was always 5 or 6 people that were whoever wants to answer a question in public that much? No one, but they were pick me, pick me. And the microphone runners would run over, and it was like clockwork. I would watch them grab the mics out of their hand, and I'd say, so how would you describe it? And they're like, they're entitled. And you would see the other wannabe mic grabbers were like, yeah, entitled, what they said. And the demographic of these people were about between 45 and 65. And the rest of the people in the room that are about 45 to 65 were like, yeah, 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 entitled. I mean, it was like a riot that was starting. So I got curious, and I asked them, so entitled, can you give me some examples? And they were always the same 3. Yeah, I'll give you an example. They're super into the app. They need to have the app updated. If the app's not updated, if they don't know where their plane is, if they don't know where the gate is, if they don't know what time their plane is leaving, they freak out. What's wrong with the app? I need to know where my plane is. I was like, okay. Anything else? Yeah, the snacks. It used to be pretzels and peanuts, but now, I'm allergic to that. I need almonds. I need healthy snacks. I need this. I need that. It used to be 2 things. Now there's 20 stacks, and they're demanding all this healthy food. I said, okay. Anything else? Yeah. They all walk around with their headphones in and their earbuds in, and they don't listen to us. And, we're on the plane. We're trying to give them the snacks, and, we tap on their shoulders, and we're like this. And then they finally take them out, and we're like, do you want something to drink? And they're like, no, take it easy. See, they're rude. They don't even listen to us. And I'm like, okay. So with kindness and caring, I would recap. So just to be clear, when you say they're entitled, they want to know when their plane is leaving and from what gate. They want healthy snacks that aren't going to kill them, and they listen to music while traveling. And normally the mic grabber would get a little smile on his face, but there was mostly the other half of the room, which were the demographic, much more like you all, like the 22 to 40-year-olds, who then had a smile on their face, because clearly it was implied the entitled millennials were the ones causing all the problems. But the interesting thing, and well, he would then say something along the lines of, well, when you put it that way, and really my concern was the way they were putting it. They had written this story. They had built up this story of these entitled passengers, and they want this and they want that. But their story was leading to the actions, which was giving them the behaviors that they didn't want, but they weren't taking any responsibility for. They were pointing the finger and blaming the entitled millennials for their actions. So I suggested we write a news story. I suggested the story maybe sounded something like, perhaps these passengers are getting on a plane and they've been traveling from coast to coast to coast to coast, week after week, and they miss their husband and they miss their dog. Perhaps these passengers are listening to music so they can calm down, so they can chill out. Perhaps they have their earbuds in so they don't have to talk to the chatty Cathy annoying passenger next to them, right? So perhaps if we think this, then we go up to them and we tap them on the shoulder with a big smile on our face, and we say, would you care for a drink? And they say, oh, that's lovely. That story leads to different actions, leads to different outcomes. And now, perhaps there's a few of you, even though, I don't know, most everyone I met in North Dakota has been so lovely and nice that I'm not quite sure, but perhaps there's a cynical soul in here or two that are like, yeah, Erin, okay, but what if they're still a jerk? Who cares? They are out of your control. Let them go choose their attitude, but it's for us to choose our story. We choose our story. We choose the narrative. And if our stories create our suffering, choose a story that's going to bring you ease. Now you might be saying, yeah, cool, Erin. It's nice to talk about here in the safety of this auditorium, but when we go out into the real world, things are tough. People are mean. People are hard. It's hard to choose my attitude. I hear you. I get it. So we have a surprise stop on our journey. That's right, the excitement that we are here at the University of Jamestown. And guess what we are going to do? To help you, a little tool that you guys are going to create to help you when you're in a funk, when you're not feeling it, when you're finding it hard to choose your attitude and to write your story. We're going to do something that always works for me, and that's listen to a song. Put on some music. What we're going to do is to create the University of Jamestown best playlist ever. And I'm going to tell you how we're going to do that. And the goal is for us to create a playlist to continue you all connecting with each other. I think music is a great connector for ourselves and a great connector to each other. So you're going to, in a second, see a QR code. There'll be a form there. Put your name, put your email, and put what I like to call your happy song. These are the songs that no matter what kind of mood you're in, you put it on, and you can't help but bring a smile to your face. Someone shout out your happy song. I'm not going to. Oh, my goodness. Okay, there we go. Right? What's your name? Kevin or Devin? Devin. So Devin just shouted out, should I do my MC Hammer dance up on stage? I'm not going to do it. Yeah, so Devin just shouted out, can't touch this. So now imagine in a few days when I send you the link to the Spotify University of Jamestown best playlist ever, we're going to imagine Devin when he's in a funk doing this is not the MC Hammer dance, but doing the MC Hammer dance, and it'll put a smile on all of our faces. All right, you guys ready? You have about 3 minutes. My techie people. You know how QR codes work. I'll give you 3 minutes to sort it out and fill out the form. right, take about 30 more seconds. All right, I'll take the quiet as a sign we are all good with our playlist. So it'll take me a few days to compile all the magic in the room, and then you'll get the link to a Spotify playlist in just a few days, and we'll all rock out together. All right. So what is your people plan? As we head to the last stop of our journey tonight, I'm hoping you are having some new ways of thinking, some new thoughts about how you could bring connection to your work or your future workplaces. But the thing about connection is that, well, the thing about work is that it's just one part of life, but then there's also the living part of life. So my plan changed about 10 years into my hospitality career when I said, it's time for a change. I'm ready to make a difference. And I headed off to the Peace Corps in Panama. And it was during my time here that I had a moment that really taught me the power of human connection. So I headed off to Panama. I was actually living on a teeny tiny island off the coast of Panama. 300 people, no running water, no electricity, no refrigeration, no toilets. I became very acquainted to a 5-gallon bucket, which is a story for another time. I was there as a community economic development volunteer. And for those of you who are not familiar with what the Peace Corps is, it's a volunteer organization. 3 goals. The first goal is to go to countries that ask us to be there and train their people. The second goal is to go to create understanding of America and the US. And then the third goal is to bring host country culture back to the United States. So if you think about it, it's kind of like a 2-year unpaid exercise in empathy with all of the understanding happening. So about a year into my service, I was living with a host family, and it was my host mom's birthday, Hoba. Hobita, we called her, because she was teeny tiny. And I thought, okay, what is something I can do to share American culture for her birthday? And I thought about it, and I thought, what could be more American than a Betty Crocker cake mix? Like the red boxes? Yeah, it's like super, super American, right? Well, since there was no running water or electricity, there was clearly no stores on the island, so I took the boat to the boat, to the bus, to the bus, to the bus, to the provincial capital, went to the supermercado, bought a box of cake mix, 2 tubs of icing, 1 for the cake, 1 for my personal consumption, as you do. Then I took the bus to the bus, to the boat, to the boat, to the boat, back to the island. Now, a little Panamanian culture. Most of the houses, huts there, only had 2-burner propane stove. My family had an actual oven. It was a small oven, but it was an oven. Now, we didn't use the oven so much for baking, but mostly we used it for storage. Meaning you would cook your breakfast in the morning, and then you would put it in the oven, because if there was one thing the island did have, it was 17 trillion different types of ants that would descend on any food within seconds. So the oven was kind of a storage spot. So I asked Hoba, can I use the oven? She said, sí, como no. So we opened up the oven to check to make sure it was all clear. She went up the hill to visit my host grandmother. I grabbed one of my host brothers, Edward. I grabbed one of my host sisters, Vicky. I said, let's make a cake. So we stirring up the cake mix. We're making the cake. We slide it into the oven, and we sit down to play a game of cards. So we're playing cards, and all of a sudden I smell something. I'm like, that doesn't smell like Betty. So I went over to the oven. I opened it, checked, make sure nothing was in there, just the cake pans. So we go back to the cards, and we're playing. And then a few minutes later, I look over, and I was like, what the? There's black, like acrid smoke pouring out of the back of the oven. And I'm like, what is going on? So I run over there, and I'm like, what is happening right now? Like, what could be in the oven? And the flames are like shooting out from underneath the bottom, like the grill pan. And I'm like, what is this? What is this? And then all of a sudden I hear Hova come running down the hill screaming, La Plata, La Plata, La Plata, La Plata, the money, the money, the money, the money. And I was like, oh God. So there was the grate there. We grabbed the grate, and I grabbed not one, not two, but three smoldering, smoking, flamed pleather wallets. And we stamp them out and we stomp them out. And it was my host family's money. It was the tourism group's money, and my host mom had a side hustle, money. Chart. Burnt. I sat there and I didn't even know what to do. Thinking, I'm here to help these people, and I just burned all their money. They don't have a lot of money. And I remember standing there in shock. And then I heard, hoo, 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 this rolling laugh. Hoo, hoo. It was my host dad, Papa's laugh. And I look up, and he's there, and he's laughing. And I look up at him, and I said, Papa, ¿por qué estás riendo? Why are you laughing? He said, Erin, did anyone get hurt? I said, no. He said, did you mean to burn the money? I said, no. He said, you were trying to do something nice for Hova. Things happen. Dude, I'm all about like controlling your response, but Papa's turnaround time was off the charts unbelievable, right? So much to the point that I kind of looked up at him like, really? Are you sure? And he gave me a little smile and a little nod. The thing is, in that moment, I had been there for a year as the one white woman on that island, the one thing that wasn't like the other. And I was trying hard to fit in. I was trying hard to be accepted. And it was in that moment, when I had burned the money, that Papa controlled his response. He asked me those questions, and he showed me that genuine caring, because he could tell that I was beating myself up and punishing myself more than anyone ever could. And in that moment was when I felt the real power of human connection. So the final question for you tonight is, what's your plan to go out and create connection? Thank you all very much.